Hey. Very tough, everyone. So just carrying on, last night we started discussing the halachot of Yom Kippur, started speaking about fasting on Yom Kippur, not fasting, for those who are required not to fast on Yom Kippur. It's a very important halachot. I want to go into a little bit more detail now on some of the practicalities of many questions that come up. Many people have already been asking. So, just mentioned yesterday, a bit of an interesting historical tidbit. So I mentioned the idea of this famous story, which may or may not have happened, of Rabbi Shiur Sept, where he supposedly during the cholera epidemic told everybody to go home and eat, or he ate, or whatever it is. So there's one account which is brought in some of the Sfarim. Again, the controversy was anybody who was sick and anybody who's required to eat obviously should eat. The question was, those that are healthy at the time of the epidemic, were they required also to fast, or should they also be eating so that they don't come to a situation of danger? It's brought down in some of the Sfarim that Rabbi Shiur Sept said everyone should eat, or others who disagreed. So one of the suggestions that was made, maybe, or that's spoken about, is that there was a suggestion that before Yom Kippur, on that occasion, everybody should make a vow forbidding all food to them on Yom Kippur. What's the logic? Normally we do Hatarat Nadarim before Yom Kippur comes in, or we do before Rosh Hashanah. We have Kol Nidrei. Nidrei is its own discussion whether that actually has any halachic impact or not, and why we do that. But the idea was as follows: that according to the suggestion, that we have a principle of Ein Isur Halal Isur, that something, again, without getting into the technicalities of these halachot, but if something's already forbidden with one prohibition, then a new prohibition will not then apply to it. So if the entire town, the entire community was to take a vow to forbid food to them on Yom Kippur, so the food would then be forbidden by virtue of the vow, and then it would not be forbidden by virtue of Yom Kippur because it's already forbidden, and therefore it's a lower level prohibition. And then if they would eat, then there's less of a problem. Okay, it's interesting piece of lamdas, interesting piece of history, which may or may not have happened. But anyway, I just mentioned that as an aside. But that is obviously not practically relevant for us nowadays. But what is practically relevant, of course, is the question: somebody who is ill, should they? How much can they eat? What do they have to do? So I mentioned yesterday, half joking, I said that every rabbi has faced this question. Somebody who comes along and says that they want to eat, they want to fast on Yom Kippur, even though they aren't allowed to. So in the past 24 hours, I've received 2 phone calls, received many more, but 2 phone calls with this exact question of people who called and said, Rabbi, the doctor says I can't fast on Yom Kippur, but I'm going to fast anyway. So I said, you should listen to my share from last night. You should. The doctor says you shouldn't fast. You shouldn't be fasting. That is the that is the halakha. And one point which I didn't mention yesterday, which is very, very important to remember in this context, is sometimes, the question is not whether a person will fast or not. Sometimes the question is, if a person stays at home in the air conditioning, stays in bed the whole day, if that's what's required, and they will be able to fast. But if they are going to get up and they're going to exert themselves, they'll walk to shul, they'll walk back, especially if it's very hot, and then they will be required to break their fast. Of course, if a person reaches a stage of pikuach nefesh, they're required to break their fast. But if the choice is, A, stay at home, daven, we spoke yesterday, vidui, tshuva, all very important. But stay at home, daven by yourself in your bed without a minyan, and you'll be able to complete the fast, or get up and go to shul, but you won't be able to fast. All the poskim agree, the answer is A. You don't go to shul if that's the situation. If you're able to fast, then that's what you need to do. Then that's what you do in order to fast. Moreover, if you have a couple and the husband's going to have to stay home to help his wife in order for her to be able to fast, or vice versa, so then that's what should be done. And fasting takes precedence over coming to shul, over any of the other benefits of the day. So that's also important to remember. Okay, when somebody so if somebody is required to break their fast, again, somebody has a medical condition, whatever it is. Let me just be clear. I'm not saying, and I'm going to get misquoted. So I'm not saying that anybody who feels a little bit weak or gets a bit of a headache or something should break their fast. No, everybody feels a little bit weak and gets a headache when they don't eat. Obviously, assuming you are still healthy, you are required to fast, and that is. But again, somebody who has a pre-existing condition, somebody who is entering a situation of sakana, of danger, of pikuach nefesh, and they've been told by the doctor before the fast, they've been told by the doctor on the fast, or during the day, they feel themselves, they know they're going to be dehydrated, they're going to faint, they're going to come to a situation of danger, then they would, again, not are allowed to break their fast, they are required to break their fast. And the Mishnah writes that somebody who's in a situation of pikuach nefesh and eats on Yom Kippur, or drinks on Yom Kippur, does not require kapara, does not require atonement. They've done what is required of them, and that is. Now we have a principle when it comes to pikuach nefesh of hakal tchila, which means if one is required for the sake of saving life to transgress Shabbat, transgress Yom Kippur, whatever it is, we transgress in the way starting with the minimum that is required and only then do more, right? So if a person needs to drink, it doesn't mean they should now go and drink 5 liters in one go. That's probably dangerous for other reasons, but you do the minimum amount that is required. If there is more that's needed, you drink more. But I cannot call tchila. And this is where the concept of shiurim comes from. We have the concept of shiurim by Yom Kippur, which essentially says like this: for any mitzvah that we have regarding eating, there is a minimum amount, for which one would be required to say a bracha forna, a minimum amount whereby one would be liable, whereby one would be punishable by the Torah. For Yom Kippur, for food and drink, it's different. For food, it is a universal amount, which is the same, about 30 cc, which is the same for everybody. For drink, the shear actually is individual. It depends on, for every person, it will change. We'll talk in a moment how we measure that. But now, even if one was to eat or drink less than that, one would that is still forbidden, because we pass like Rabbi Yochanan, who says chatzi shiur asur min haTorah. Even though it's less than the shear, it is still forbidden. So somebody who's healthy cannot eat or drink less than a shear. But somebody who's sick and somebody who needs to break their fast, it's preferable to begin with less than a shear and only to have less than a shear if possible, because that is the amount for which one would not be chayav karet. That is less than again, a person's not going to be chayav if they're required to fast, but that's a lower level prohibition. Rather transgress that, and only if necessary to eat more. As we've said, this should be discussed beforehand with the doctor, be discussed with the rabbi, to understand how much a person is required to eat or drink, only in shiurim or more than shiurim. But what are shiurim, and how do we measure it? So this needs to be measured before Yom Kippur, ideally. So if a person thinks that they may have to break their fast, or a person knows that they'll have to break their fast, they should measure the shiurim on Erev Yom Kippur or before. So say for food, and it's probably less common to have to eat. It's more common to drink, so as not to get dehydrated in these situations. Sometimes people are required to eat as well. For food, it's about 30 cc, which is more or less the size of a matchbox, and the small matchboxes, not the big ones. But for drink, it's a melolug mav, which is a cheekful. So how does one know what that is? Again, that changes for every individual. So the advice is, on Erev Yom Kippur, or before, even now, one should fill up their mouth with water, both cheekfuls, in order to measure. One should fill it, when you have your cheeks puffed up, filled with water, fill that up, then spit that amount back into a cup, into an empty cup, and then half it. So then you have half of that, and the easiest way to do this is you take a cup, you take a plastic chad pa'ami, you take a permanent marker, so you filled up the cup with from both cheekfuls, you've now split it in half. That is the amount of a melolug mav. You draw a circle around you mark on the cup as to where that reaches up to. Do that with a few cups, and then if one is required to drink in shiurim on Yom Kippur, that is the amount. Again, it changes for each individual, and there is a certain time period for the shiurim as well. So that is the amount that should be drunk every. There are many different opinions as to what how long this period is. Generally, we say lakatchila, if one can wait 9 minutes in between, that is preferable. If that's not possible, so then one goes down to 8 minutes, 7 minutes, etc. Generally speaking, 9 minutes between each melolug mav. That is, somebody is required to drink on Yom Kippur. Does not have to drink water. One can drink juice. One can drink other things. again, which are going to be nutritious and keep one dehydrated and fulfill that purpose. Another very, very common question which comes up for one who is fasting or one who is not fasting is regarding medication. Again, as I say, one needs to speak to a doctor beforehand. There are some things which may not be critical if a person misses a day, but many medications, heart medications, blood thinners, things like that, which a person has to take every day, and not to take it one day is going to be dangerous. So one should certainly take the medication. Swallowing a pill, swallowing a tablet is not considered eating, and therefore the swallowing of the tablet itself, there is no prohibition in that. Where it becomes complicated is, what about drinking water with it? Some people, if a person's able to swallow the tablet without drinking anything, so that is preferable. If a person cannot do that, what if we have a person who is, so again, if it's somebody who is drinking in shiurim and they're drinking the water anyway, they can drink that and swallow the pill. What if somebody who is otherwise healthy, is otherwise fasting, they need to take the medication, but to take the medication they need to drink? So then the advice would be to drink something bitter. If we take, in the same way that swallowing a pill is not considered eating, drinking or eating something which one would not normally consume, something which is very, very bitter, therefore that is not considered drinking as well, and that would be the answer. That would be permitted. So if one was to take some chamomile tea, to take a few tea bags, make it very, very strong and very bitter, prepare before Yom Kippur, and use that to help one swallow the tablets, that would be allowed. Another question which comes up, and often there are many medications where the recommendation is one needs to eat before taking the medication. So here we have another shaila. This is more complicated. Is one allowed to? One is not eating, but is one allowed to eat in order to take the medication? So I heard from a world-renowned doctor and rabbi, right, Professor Avram Steinberg, who's actually going to be visiting our shul come the end of October. More details for that, so look out for that. But he said that, again, generally speaking, when one is required to eat before taking medication, it's because not eating can cause stomach ulcers, can cause certain types of pain and problems. But he said, if it happens once on one day that a person takes the medication without eating, it's usually not going to be such a big deal. It's not going to cause any adverse effect, and therefore that was his recommendation. Again, one should check with a doctor, but generally speaking, to take it once, again, if the pill's taken twice a day, often you can take the night of Yom Kippur, you can take before the fast comes in, the day you can take after the fast goes out. So it's really just one tablet, sometimes two. But generally speaking, that one tablet can be taken without medication, without eating, and that would be okay. If the doctor says that there is absolutely no way, and one has to eat as well, so then one should consult a halachic authority one in time before. Rabbi Kenigsberg Mincha אומר, שהקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות ישראל, לפי תקווה להם תורה מצוות, 12 אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה וידיר.